Alright, everyone, so let's talk about why I have books like this: Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler and quotations from Mao Tse-tung. Why do I have books like this? Why are these books important? I also, to give you a grander perspective of the books I'm talking about, I also got this book recently that I've been really waiting for, and it's a propaganda project. It's all about propaganda throughout, the 1900s, but throughout, there's a lot of examples in here at least that I've read. I haven't really dived into this book very much yet, but it talks a lot about propaganda, how it's made, how it's formed, what it looks like. And the reason I have these books, and also this one called Dear Leader, which is about Kim Jong-il when he was in power, not Kim Jong-un. And Kim Il-sung was the first of these triumvirates of plagues upon this earth. Now, why do I have books like this? So, some of these you can say, like, okay, yeah, you want to study propaganda. Okay, you want to study, Dear Leader and, experiences from people that, have escaped North Korea. Why do you have Mein Kampf and quotations from Mao Zedong? Because of a promise that was not made by me, but it's one that I have taken up as my own. Just after the Holocaust, there was this promise that a lot of people made: never again. And this never again promise didn't just apply to people that were persecuted and killed and massacred by the Nazis in concentration camps. This promise applied to all of humanity, no matter who you are. That was the implication. Never again. We're not going to let something like this happen again. This promise was not made by me, but I take it up readily. And I study things that most people would recoil from, and justifiably so that I know how to combat in my own way certain ideologies that have proven to be very toxic and harmful to people as individuals. And it's always the individual when you see the individual affected, when the individual has no rights, but only the rights as a whole group, that's when you know that liberties are going to be trampled upon. So why the focus on communism in most of these things? Dear Leader by Jang Jin-sung. Focus on North Korea, Kim Jong-il. Mao Zedong, quotations from. So Stalin was also terrible. Killed 16 million of his own people, not even in war. And Hitler killed, you can say, with war and in killing Jewish people, 26 to 35 million. I'm just ballparking it here because I know he killed 16 million. He killed around 16 million Jews. Now, of course, we have Mussolini, who had his own death squads, and we had Stalin, who killed so many of his own people, 16 million, as I said. But what dwarfs all of these numbers is actually a figure that most people don't know. Now, I was listening to this audiobook recently, and I've done research in the past on Chairman Mao Tse-tung. Not in war, outside of war, he killed 70 million of his own people. That's right, 70, not 17, 70. How did he kill 70 million of his own people outside of war, you might ask? And of course, we're talking about late 20s to, into the 70s, I believe. That's a rough estimate. Well, for especially early on in the late 40s and 50s, and through the 50s, he just didn't really care about peasants. and most of the Chinese population was peasants. It's a very big place. Everybody's spread out. A lot of people are farmers. A lot of people work the land. And of course, he completely obliterated the population of landowners, not land workers, but landowners. Anybody who had any money was purged and their possessions taken. Um, Especially when he got in complete power once he had defeated the forces of the nationalists and the Japanese pulled out. The Chinese nationalists pulled into Taiwan, and the Japanese, pulled out at the end of World War II. But Mao adopted the Soviet model of working the peasants to death, not caring about them, getting them to provide food for the workers and the soldiers, but not really caring about the peasants. Only giving them food based on how much work they had done. And it was never really enough. And if you didn't do enough work, you didn't get food. And the food that you did get, even if you did a lot of work, was just enough for you to get by. But with all the hard labor, people starved to death. Cannibalism was rampant. People were chewing on grass, on leaves, on bark, just to fill their stomachs. We see this in concentration camps in Nazi Germany. We see people chasing rats and insects and just putting whatever they could into their stomach because of the pain. This happened for tens of millions more people under Mao's rule. The reason we don't hear about it is because the Communist Party of China wants to cover it up. They don't want their founder to be seen as a pariah. And there's some in the communist government that actually want to talk about it. This whole great leap forward, which basically Mao, when he was in full power, he wanted to produce more steel than the United States, more iron. He wanted to process more iron and steel. But the problem was that he was all about quantity and not quality. So none of it was usable. Tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of people were working in these iron plants, processing iron ore. And just because he was focused on quantity and not quality, none of it, almost none of it, was usable. Also, cadres that were in charge of these vast these vast basically slave farms of peasants that would, till the fields and gather crops, they were put into competition with one another. To reach, you get rewarded if you got the most product. But what happened was a lot of people started stuffing the like rice, adding hay in there so that it would weigh more, and also harvesting before the crop was completely ready, which created a lot of not only bad crops but basically harvesting crops before they had their complete yield, causing a lot of starvation. So the peasants, not only were they given just a little bit of rice, the crops that they were making, just because of the competition between cadres that Mao Zedong promoted, they weren't even producing as much food as they could have for other people. So we have all this starvation. We have cannibalism. It's terrible. It's awful, and it makes me want to understand how these things happen. What are the processes that goes on in somebody's head, like Mao Zedong? I always say Zedong, but it's Mao Zedong. What goes on in their heads? What are they thinking? How do they make this okay to themselves? I think that about Stalin. I think about Hitler. I think about Mao Zedong. I think about Kim Jong-un, Kim Jong-il, Kim Il-sung. I think about Vlad the Impaler, Ivan the Terrible. What goes on in the head to make this okay? Because, I consider myself a compassionate person. I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I don't, like, even somebody who I really hate, and there's been people that I really hate, I would never have put them through a fraction of the pain that these people were putting millions of people through. I don't get it, so I want to understand. I want to understand how they thought and how to combat that thought. because it's awful. It's history. I'm a student of history, and history is littered with um, half-baked promises, ill-conceived notions, and lackluster results, effects, whereas much more was promised. So let's go ahead and go to. Now, I don't usually say this. I don't think I've said it about anybody live. We have this idea that perhaps Kim Jong-un might be dead. He might have died because he had heart surgery recently, and we haven't seen him around, or at least they haven't shown any images of him or any video. So people are thinking that he might be dead. If he's dead, I'm glad. I'm not going to lie. His family, as I'm going to go into a few facts here that I've written down, has been keeping generations of people in concentration camps. And these camps are just as bad as the Jewish, well, the Nazi camps during World War II. Except they're lasting generations. They're not lasting 10 to 20 years. These camps have been around for many decades. Since Kim Il-sung. And Kim Jong-un has no interest in freeing these people. It seems like he's even extended the 3-generation rule, but we're about to get into that. So if Kim Jong-un is dead, I am grateful. I'm grateful to the universe, and I'm so happy. But I really hope that somebody almost as bad or just as bad doesn't replace him. But Kim Jong-un, out of all the people on this world that need to die, well, I wouldn't say need to die, but deserve to die. Not that I'd necessarily kill them. Kim Jong-un is definitely one of them. He's a monster. He gets fat while his people are starving, and he continues policies that his father and grandfather instituted with more zeal than he even has to. He blew up his own uncle with artillery because his uncle didn't cry enough at his father's funeral. His current wife got him to not only send his ex-girlfriend into a concentration camp, but the entire band that she was a part of in a university to a concentration camp, and the families. I think that says something a lot about Kim Jong-un's current wife, but also him. Perfect storm for anybody around him. And I can't imagine what terror his citizens are feeling. So let's go ahead and get some facts that I've written down. So I'm not just ranting at you. I know I rant sometimes. I apologize. But this rant is, I feel, justified because when we say never again, and you take up that promise, you gotta try to figure out a way that we can prevent this. I can't do it. I mean, of course I can't do it alone, but I want to add a little small piece of help to this cause, and this isn't the only video that's going to do that. I've been trying to do it for a while, but I haven't been as successful as I wished in preventing the kind of ignorance that we see nowadays. But at any rate, let's get into some facts about Kim Jong-un and the Kim dynasty as a whole. So, Kim Jong-un. Now, this 3 generations rule is one that it was always meant for severe cases, but it has been used for not severe cases. Let me explain. So, the 3 generations rule mandates that any serious crime warrants punishing not just the offender, but 3 generations of his or her family as well. According to Kim Il-sung, the only way to exterminate the seed of evil completely was supposed to be used for great offenses, but from defectors, we've learned that at times it was instituted for simply not dusting the portraits of Kim ruling family members. So let's think about this. When we say 3 generations of punishment, we're talking about 3 generations in concentration camps. That means if you do something wrong, not only you are going to be put in that concentration camp, not only your children are going to be put in that concentration camp, But your grandchildren that are born in that concentration camp or beforehand, in some cases, 3 generations into a concentration camp. And this has been going on for many generations, many, many decades, since Kim Il Sung, which, I mean, it's, I want to say, I don't know why I'm blanking on the date, but I want to say at least from, the 50s until now. Even if it's from the 60s or 70s, that's still a lot of decades. We had the Korean War in the 50s, so I mean, I suppose it's from the 50s. But that's a lot of decades for people to be in concentration camps. Hitler had, what, 10, 15 years of people in concentration camps? But since this is such a political issue, it's so much tied to communism in the East with China and North Korea and trying to maintain relations there that these things just aren't talked about. And it's awful. It's like if Nazi Germany was a world power that everybody was kind of okay with because, if they went to war with them, they'd have to go to war with their allies like Italy or Spain. If we just didn't talk about Nazi concentration camps because it was politically inconvenient or, we kind of wanted their free labor that they were using their prisoners for. We like a lot of really cheap labor from China, for instance. It's like if we just weren't talking about the Nazi concentration camps. But these concentration camps, the same kind of camps are existing right now. So let's talk about what goes on in these concentration camps because it just blows my mind that people don't talk about this more. People don't know about it. This is happening. What happened to Never Again? What happened? Why did we stop caring? Anyway, let's talk about what happens in these concentration camps. So, concentration camps fed barely enough to stay alive to the point of having to catch rats and insects to eat so one can survive. People of every age except below teen years, and sometimes children as well, suffer 12-hour workdays, 7 days a week. Beatings, torture, and rape by guards is common. There is no possibility of parole. And the way that they affect this is because no foreign information of any kind is allowed, just like the Nazi book burnings and a regulation of information by the Gestapo. Religion is banned. The Nazis look down on religion. Replaced by Junke. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Juche. A hybrid fusion of Marxism and Korean nationalism created by Kim Il Sung. Basically, that is the religion, but it's not taught. But spiritual beings, higher beings, are not talked about. It's just basically dying loyalty to the Kim family, and even somebody who defects, their families are punished by being sent to concentration camps. This is all the hallmarks of Nazi Germany. Just they don't have the capability to invade other people. So. I didn't make the promise never again, but I feel obligated and I join myself with that promise. I just don't understand why, if something is just inconvenient to the rest of the world, why, I'm not saying, bomb North Korea or, invade North Korea, but why isn't the information a thing? These camps are just as bad as Nazi Germany camps. People are dying in them for generations, starving to death, being tortured. I watched a documentary where, the camp commandants still torture people for no reason. Even children for no reason. And people die of starvation all the time. But we're not even willing to talk about it. Is the reason we're not willing to talk about it because we know we can't do anything about it right now? Because of North Korea and China's union or their alliance? I think that even if we're not going to invade, we should talk about it. Put pressure of some kind. Maybe not on North Korea as far as trade embargoes, because the people always end up suffering from that, but something. There's got to be a way we can have the dialogue and then work out solutions. I don't have the solutions, but we need to have this dialogue. Concentration camps exist right now. It's just not convenient to stop it. So we don't. I hope that in the coming years, I don't want to say that I wish there was more bravery because It's not like I'm going to take up a gun and go to North Korea, or I'm not out campaigning for the people in concentration camps in North Korea, but I feel like we just need more people who give a shit about it. I mean, that's where it starts. We have to start caring about people who we have nothing in common with, who have been suffering for decades. Because they're human beings, we should care about it. That is my understanding. That is my policy with everyone on this earth. Um, anyway, the reason I have these books is so that I can learn ways to combat such ideology and with such effects, and make sure I don't forget the history that the world has experienced, and that it's not too hard to go back down that road. It just takes the right message, the right time, the right fear, the right anger, the right hatred, and then we're right back to where we were. Educate yourselves. I try to educate myself. I don't do it enough. We have to be strong, because the people who are being strong in concentration camps, it's killing them. Thank you very much for watching, and hope all of you have a good day.